Hello everyone, welcome back to Mama's Home Kitchen. It is meal prep Monday for me. I don't do it often, but when I do it big. We're making some homemade soup today, 3 different kinds, and some spaghetti sauce, so red sauce, marinara sauce, and meatballs, and some Italian sausage. So it's going to be a packed day. I have already started my chicken stock for my chicken noodle soup. The other soups I'm making, I just use a box stock and doctor it up a little bit, but chicken noodle has to have homemade stock. So I have a whole chicken in the pot behind me with my onions and carrots and celery and bay leaves, garlic, salt, and then I will add more stuff once the stock is almost finished. So the first thing I'm going to do is, or I've already kind of started getting things ready for the soup. This will be wild rice, chicken wild rice and mushroom, creamy style. I will be using cremini mushrooms, and I will be using shiitake mushrooms in that. And then I used a blend rice, a wild rice blend, and I'm going to make it in the crock pot. So I don't have enough burners to make everything that I want to make today, so some stuff has to be made in the crock pot. I've already chopped up my carrots, celery, and onions, my garlic, my chicken breast that's going to go in there. I've rinsed my rice. It's a cup of rice. I've rinsed it, and then all my seasonings. The recipe called for a Trader Joe's 21 seasoning blend. I don't have that, so I made up my own. There's not 21 seasonings in it, but there is some nutritional yeast. There's some salt, some pepper, some oregano, some bay leaves, and at the very end, I'm going to put in some onion salt if I need to, or some onion powder if I need to, if those onions don't flavor it up enough. I can always season at the end if I don't like the taste. So that's one of the soups. The other soup I'm going to make is borscht. My girls love the borscht, so I started that. I have 3 large potatoes. They're about this big, cut up into cubes. Oops, into little cubes, sitting in water so they don't get brown. I've already shredded half of a head of cabbage. It was a large cabbage, so it's a little less than half. This was the size of the cabbage. I mean, it was huge. And that's done. And then I went on to grating my carrots, and I'm like, wait, I have a new machine. So this is the way I used to grate them. In this little container, and they fall to the bottom, and you use them up. But I just bought an extension for my KitchenAid. So I'm going to go over there. I have to take off the microphone because it doesn't reach. So I'm going to yell. So I'm going to take my carrots. We're going to grate our carrots, and we're going to see how it works together. I don't know. So we shall see. Oh, it works good. It's not making a mess. It's not making a mess, so that's really good. This is fantastic if you've got weak wrists like I do. Boy, that made short work of it. And then this just pops out, but I'm actually going to use it again because I need to also do my beets. Okay, so my phone rang and it paused the video, so we're going to go back over a couple things in case I missed it. We're using 2 of these, and I use the chicken stock, not the chicken broth, and I put that in there. The last half hour, I'm gonna let it cook for 6 hours. At 6 hours, I'm gonna see if the chicken is ready to be pulled. If it is, I'm gonna pull the chicken out. I'm gonna put my mushrooms in. I'm gonna slice those. I'm not gonna leave them whole like that. I am gonna slice them a little bit. And I'll put it in. I'll make my cream sauce that will go in it. And I will put the chicken and the cream sauce and everything back in for another half an hour to let that rice finish cooking. The rice will take a full 7 hours to cook. So we're gonna make the meatballs now for the spaghetti, for the red sauce. I use ground chuck and 7327 ground beef. You can use whatever you want. I like a little bit of the fat in there. So to use like ground chuck and ground sirloin would make your meatball really, really dry. Some people use pork in their meatballs. I don't like it that way. And then we're gonna add a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay. So I have my ground beef in there. It's about 6 pounds, 5 pounds, 2 big packages. I have a small onion grated and the juice. I have probably 2 tablespoons of parsley. That's probably more like a tablespoon and a half. A tablespoon of oregano. You can use measuring spoons. I just don't. Not for any reason other than I'm already a tornado in the kitchen and that's just more dishes Rich has to do. Tablespoon of oregano. Tablespoon of basil. I'm going to use a teaspoon of onion powder. Okay, but I don't want to pop the lid off, so I'm going to do it that way. Now, yes, I already put real onion in it, but this is going to take it over the edge with the oniony flavor, which I really like. In this, I don't use fresh garlic. Well, I do, but I use it out of a jar that I just buy at the store. And I do 3 teaspoons of garlic. Now, depending on how garlicky you like it, you can always add more. Remember, this is your dinner, not mine. I do 1 egg. And then there is a possibility that I'll add another egg later. But I like to start with 1 and go from there. So I did get egg on my hands, so I gotta fix that. I have some salt. I am not going to tell you how much salt to put in. I probably put in way less than I should. My kids complain because I never have enough salt in anything, but I don't like a lot of salt. And a little bit of pepper. And about a quarter, a half. Maybe a half and an eighth. And then I'll mix it, see how it turns out, and then we'll go from there. I do usually have to add some more seasonings, and I do it all by look. I'm sorry I don't have direct measurements. My kids will know how to do it. They've done it with me enough times. But when you're making meatballs, you want to make sure not to overwork the meat, or you'll have very dry, tough meatballs. So when you're doing it, don't squeeze the meat. Roll it and push. Roll it and push until all the seasonings are combined. Now, if you see a big piece of onion, I just saw a big piece of onion. If I find it again, I'm going to take it out. I don't want big, huge pieces of onion in there. I just want little. So you're just going to want to make sure that all your seasonings are through all the meat. So like here, I have a big chunk of onion. I'm just going to take that out. Now, the other day, I watched a video that said, well, it didn't say anything. I saw that you could use a noodle spoon, the slotted noodle spoon with the little hole in the bottom to make meatballs. So we're going to try it and see if it works. This looks pretty good. I don't think I got to add anything. Let me see here. Let me just... Oh, there's some seasonings right there. I just want to distribute those evenly. They do end up, the seasonings do end up sitting at the bottom, so you've got to make sure that you're really mixing it well without squeezing. Don't squeeze the meat. Okay. The thing I need is way over there, and I can't get it. Can you either pause me or can you go get it, please? Okay, so this is what they were saying, was that you could use this hole, which mine is very small, to make meatballs. That is not going to work for us. That's definitely not the size meatball I want. So instead, I'm going to do it by hand. We like some pretty decent sized meatball, but don't make them too big because they'll dry out when you're cooking them. So I think that's going to be my size. And then I'm just going to put them on this tray. You want to make your meatballs as consistent as possible, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually fry them first and get the outsides nice and crispy on all the sides. And then we're going to bake them. We're going to finish them off in the oven. And the reason we do that is because I burn my meatballs if I do them just on the stove. I'm just not that talented to be able to cook my meatball on the stove and have the inside nice and done and the outside crispy but not burnt. Mine burn. So I'm going to go ahead and make this whole bucket of meatballs. And then we're going to fry them up. Pause. Okay, so I finished rolling the meatballs. And now my chicken stock is done. I actually pulled the chicken out of the chicken stock. And now I'm going to drain it into a pan. So I'm going to take this off so you can see what I'm doing. So inside my Dutch oven. And then I do it in the sink just in case I make a mess. There we go. And then we have very condensed stock, so then I can split it with water to make the chicken noodle soup and the borscht. I'm going to throw, I think I'm going to start the borscht and then we'll get the meatballs going. But, so here's my stock. I don't know if you can see it. So, but this can be cut with water a little bit, which will give me a little bit extra stock. But I don't want to do that yet. First, I'm going to get the stuff going for the borscht. We're going to do, I don't even know if you can hear me. Probably not. Let's see here. Let's try this. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to do 3 good swirls, 4, 5 in that pot. 5 good swirls of olive oil. And I'm going to warm that puppy up because we're going to saute our borscht vegetables before we add the broth and all that fun stuff. They will saute for about 20-25 minutes. I am also going to get my cast iron out for the meatballs because we want to get those going. We're going to actually do 2 pans because one will be for the neck bones and sausage. I think at this point I'm safe to put this away. We shall see. Okay. The oil's nice and hot. We're going to put the onions in first. Now I like to put the garlic in last when it's all cooked and done. I don't like the garlic to cook during the saute process. I'm going to turn my heat down to medium. And I'm just going to let my onions cook for about a minute and a half, get translucent. But we don't want them burned. We don't want them browned at all. In the meantime, I want to show you my chicken. So this is what I pulled out of the water. I'm actually going to pull it apart and use it for the chicken noodle soup. I'm also going to make chicken salad out of it, or maybe even chicken enchiladas. I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but it will be used for a couple of different meals. Okay. So once my onions are translucent, I will add the rest of the vegetables to it. And then just let that cook down for about 20 minutes. You do want that beet juice. Don't dump it out. That's going to give you the pretty color at the end. Sometimes I do end up having to add some more oil to it. It just depends. So the only thing left on my tray is that garlic, and that'll go into the very, very end. Oops. Okay, now we're just going to let that cook. I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes, otherwise I will forget. And then we're going to get going on the meatballs. So remember, I used the lower or the higher fat content of ground beef. So I don't need a ton of oil in the bottom of the pan, but I do need a little bit. And because it's cast iron, I'm going to let it get hot before I put my meatballs in it. Otherwise, they're going to stick. So you want a hot pot and cold oil. But I'm only going to use a little. You can use olive oil or you can use coconut oil. But if you're going to use coconut oil, use refined. Do not use the regular unrefined because it will taste like coconut. And the last thing you want your Italian meatballs to taste like is coconut. So I'm just going to use olive oil today. This will be done in a couple of batches. I'm not going to be able to get them all fried at once. So once this heats up, it takes a little bit for it to warm up, of course. I am going to have to put more oil in this. It's a little dry. And I don't want it to burn at all. So one more go around the pan. I think going around the pan one time like that is about a tablespoon of oil. There we go. And then as that's cooking for the 20 minutes, just stir it every once in a while. Oh, that feels good. So I'm just gonna do maybe a tablespoon and a half. And I could have probably put a little bit less. So maybe a tablespoon in the bottom of your pan. And then we're just going to, I feel like it's not where I want it yet. Nope. So if you go like this and you just kind of touch it, if it doesn't start to sizzle right away, then it's not ready. Give it another second or two, minute, 30 seconds, not really a second, but okay, it's starting to pop now. There we go. Don't overcrowd your meatballs. They need air to get around them. I did, each meatball is about 85 grams. I'm able to eyeball it. I only had a couple that were a little bit too big. So, and then we're just gonna cook them, and I'll show you once I've got them all cooked how they're gonna look. Okay, so my vegetables have sauteed for 20 minutes. Now I'm gonna add the stock to it. I took the stock that I made and I took half, not quite half, I did about 2.5 cups, right? This is 8 cups. I did 4 cups of my stock and 4 cups of plain water. So that's 8. But I want 8 more cups. So what I use is Better Than bouillon, and I use the roasted chicken one, and I do 2 huge scoops of this. Which is exactly what I had left from the last time I made borscht. And then I am boiling water, and I'll put 4 cups of boiling water with it and add it to my borscht. That will cook for about 20-25 minutes, and then I will add the potatoes that I cut earlier and cube. And then we'll add those for about 15 minutes, just until they're al dente, because they're going to sit in that liquid, and if you overcook them, they're just going to be mush. And then that will be, the borscht will be over. I'll show you a picture at the end of the video. I'm still cooking the meatballs, so I'm almost done. I have about, I don't know, 8 more in the pan or something. But I will show you what they're going to look like. That's what they're going to look like. And they're going to go in this pan in the oven on 350 until they finish cooking. I'm just going to cook them through, because when I serve them, they'll actually go into the sauce to be served. I will cool these all the way and freeze them for a later date, because we're not going to have all this food tonight, obviously. So these will get frozen, and then I can pull out 2 or 3, even if it's just for an individual meal for just me or one of the kids, or I'm making a large meal. I'll have everything all ready to go. And then once I get that going, I'm going to do the neck bones. I don't know if anybody's ever used neck bones, but this is what they are. And this will get browned on the bottom of my sauce pan, the pan I use to make my spaghetti sauce. This will get browned, and I'll add the onions and the sauce to the grease from this. Okay, so I have added the potatoes to the borscht. They're going to cook for about 10 more minutes. The meatballs are done. I shredded the chicken. And then now I am going to start with the neck bones for my sauce, for my spaghetti sauce. I'm going to turn on the direct burner and get my cast iron. I have a couple of cast irons, so I'm going to use this one. Get it nice and hot, put my oil in and fry up my neck bones. And then they will actually go in my sauce. The grease and everything will go in my sauce. And then at the end, the bones will come out, but the marrow and the meat will stay in. You don't have to do it that way. You can actually just, if you don't want meat in your red sauce, you can do it like this and then put the meat on the side and use the grease as the olive oil or as the oil component to your spaghetti sauce to fry your onions in. It'll still give it the same amount of flavor. We just like the meat in there, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my pan hot. I'm going to put about 1.5 tablespoons of oil in it. I'm going to actually turn that off so you can hear me better. And then you're just going to go like this. These are cut pretty thick. I went to a new grocery store. Usually they're cut about that thick and they're pieces about like that. They're a little bit easier to work with that way. So I'm going to fry these up on both sides, get them brown, and I'm going to shove them in the oven and finish cooking them in the oven. It'll take a total of about 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so now I'm getting ready to do my red sauce, and I am going to, I put the drippings in from the neck bones, and I got it going in. I also put in 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to throw my onions in. Do not let your onions get brown, just translucent, so turn your heat way down. So you just want them translucent, you don't want them caramelized, or you're going to have a really sweet sauce. Perfect. So we'll let them cook for a couple of minutes here. Probably not a couple of minutes, more like a minute maybe. They just need to be a little translucent. Oh, this is one of my favorite little contraptions. Goes like this and it does all my onions. And then my eyes don't water as much as if I were to do them by myself. While we're waiting for those to finish up, I added to my chicken broth, my homemade chicken broth, I added 9 cups of water. I added onions, celery, not cucumbers, carrots, and the chicken back in, and I'm going to let that cook and get the vegetables nice and soft. And then I will add some extra seasoning, some salt, some pepper. I'll probably add some parsley like normal, some other Italian seasonings. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to add to it. I do it different every time, and it usually tastes great, so I really don't have much trouble with it. So that's going to cook, and then we're going to do these onions. Okay, let's see. We're almost there. Now I'm going to show you my onions. They do look a little brown, but that's because the drippings were brown. Can you see them? I don't know if you can see them. Yes, okay. So they do look a little brown, but that's because the drippings from the neck bones was brown. But the onions are not caramelized at all. Then I'm going to add 2 cans of crushed tomatoes. Please use good tomatoes. Do not buy Red Gold or Hunt's. Use a good Italian tomato. In my neck of the woods, we have a place called Caputo's. They have great tomato sauce there. I do 2 cans of tomato puree and 2 cans of crushed tomatoes. And then I do 2 cans of whole tomatoes. And we're just going to put that all in there. And the whole tomatoes I squish in my hand. I don't know why, it just feels good, so I like doing it. But it does make a mess, a little bit of a mess. I'm going to actually go on this side so you can see. So I just squish it in my hand, and it gives me some nice sized pieces. Now I am wearing gloves for the video. Normally I don't, but it's just my family eating it. So if I do cook for other people, I do wear gloves. But I tend to wash my hands more when I'm not wearing gloves than when I'm wearing gloves, because I'm not going to go through 50 pairs of gloves to make a meal. So I tend to wash the gloves, just like I would my hands. So we're going to put this in here, and the juice. Okay. Now I'm going to stir it because that looks really like enough sauce for me. I may not put in that second can of tomatoes, whole tomatoes. Let's see what we got. Oh yeah, that looks good. It's about up to here. About there. And then that is going to cook with the lid on. I'm going to add my seasonings first, but that's going to cook with the lid on until it gets a little runny. And then I'm going to take the lid off halfway. We're going to do basil, about a tablespoon and a half, about a tablespoon of oregano. Remember, we can always add, so I tend to go a little light and then add more later. We're going to do some garlic powder. Normally I do fresh garlic, which I do actually have sitting there, and I'm going to add it in a little bit. I normally put it in with the onions, but we've been a little chaotic today, so I forgot to add it to the onions when I was making the onions. So I will actually do that on the side in another pan and then just add it to it. It won't be much of a difference. I'm not going to add salt yet. I like to add salt once it's cooked for a little while, because the onions, or not the onions, the tomatoes all have a ton of sodium in them. So I'm just going to wait and see. But this is going to cook on medium heat until it starts to simmer, and then I'll turn it down and I'll put the lid on it, and I'll leave the lid on for, probably cook it for 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'll add beef broth to it. So we're going to thin it out with some beef stock. This is not low sodium. Usually I use a low sodium one. This isn't, and that's another reason I am not putting salt in it yet. I want to wait and taste it once it doesn't just taste like canned tomatoes. So we got our soup going, we got our tomato sauce going, we have our meatballs are finished, our neck bones are finished, they'll be going in there soon. Our soup is going, the wild rice, creamy wild rice soup is working. So that has been our day today, and I will come back and show you when this is all done working. I will still fry up some Italian sausage and add that to my red sauce, or I'll freeze it and then people can choose whether they want meatballs or Italian sausage. Also with that Italian sausage, if they decide we're going to have meatballs for dinner that night, we can do Italian sausage, peppers, and onions another night. They're already cooked. All I got to do is saute the peppers and onions and throw the sausage in there at the last second, warm it up, and we're good to go. So this will give us a week's worth of meals, actually a little bit more than a week with the soups. So it's a nice way to stretch a budget. Only cook for one day. I won't have to cook tomorrow. I won't have to cook the rest of the week. This particular week is Thanksgiving, so I will be cooking Thursday, but only for Thanksgiving dinner. So that's my kitchen today. Have a great day. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the soup, the wild rice soup, and I need to make a little bit of a cream sauce. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a roux with a stick of butter, a half a cup of flour. I'll let the flour cook for a minute, get the floury taste out, and then add my liquid, which is 1.5 cups of 2% milk and a half a cup of heavy cream because I want it thicker. And then I have, in the meantime, shredded the chicken that we put in the crock pot with the soup. I also cut my mushrooms, which I did a half a package of the shiitake and a half a package of the cremini. I cut them into decent sized slices because they're going to cook down a little bit in this last half hour. So I'm just going to get this done. I'm going to add it to my soup and then let it cook maybe another 10 minutes just to get hot, real hot again, and then it'll be all done. Okay, so here is how you make a roux. Equal flour and butter. So just put that in there. I have that heat up a little bit too high. You just want to do it till it's like nice and smooth. You don't want any floury lumps. And then you also want to make sure that it doesn't taste like flour. So you're going to do this for a solid minute. But whisk continually. I still get the heat up a little high. So my heat is at like medium. Now when I add the liquid, I can't stop whisking. So I'm going to have to set the phone down because I lost my partner. So I'm going to set the phone down for a second. Okay, so I whisked the milk in and the cream, and now I'm just going to stir it for a little bit until it gets real velvety smooth and thickens up. I actually feel like it's a little gritty, so I am going to add just a little bit more regular milk into it to get the right consistency. Oh, I lost my spatula. Anyway, I put the cream in the soup, the chicken's back in, the mushrooms are back in. I turned the setting to high, and I'm going to let it cook like this. No, the lid. I'm going to let it cook like this for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Ouch. 25 minutes on high so that it'll thicken up a little bit, and that will be finished. I've finished everything else. We have our red sauce with neck bones, which I lost the spatula to that. Okay, so there's my red sauce, and I do have my neck bones in there still, which will come out at the end. Well, it is the end, it's over, but I'm not gonna, when I freeze it, I'll take them out. So that's that one. And then we have our borscht, which is this spoon. So that's our borscht. Now we do make borscht without meat because my girls like it as a vegetable soup. A lot of people will put meat in theirs, but there's my borscht, nice and red, just the color we like. Here are my meatballs ready to go in the freezer, my Italian sausage, my extra shredded chicken that I have, which we may end up putting some in here. John likes the chicken noodle soup with lots of chicken in it. So here's my chicken noodle soup. We make the noodles separate so that they don't get soggy, because if you put them in here and then you freeze them, your noodles are just mush. So we'll make the noodles separate, whatever we need for that day. And that's it. So we have probably 5 full meals and then a couple of lunches, because the kids will eat this for lunch or the borscht for lunch, or maybe even a sandwich with red sauce on it or something for lunch. And that's the outcome. So we started at noon. It's now 5 p.m. So in 5 hours, I made enough food for 6 people for 5 days.